Good evening, everybody. This is Al Rogers, broadcasting from the Progressive Communication Network. Tonight we're going to be discussing why Donald Trump is not a stable genius. In fact, he graduated a little more than 50 years ago from the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School of Business. His professor, William T. Kelly, once said several times over through the years, but once said that Trump was one of the worst moronic students he had in 34 years of teaching. Now, we all know that as of recently, his chief of staff, William Kelly, no relationship to, John Kelly, no relationship to William T. Kelly from 1968, also called Trump a moron. Now, in the next 3 or 4 minutes, I'll be laying out this website that shows that Trump has less of an understanding of macroeconomics than the sophomore in his alma mater, the Wharton School of Business, macroeconomics lesson for Mr. Donald Trump tonight. One mistake that every Republican congressman, as well as Donald Trump, has made is that the Affordable Health Care Act was a step in the right direction. Website data found on uscourts.gov compiled that 62% of all personal bankruptcies are caused by a person's inability to pay for their health care costs. Now, another fact based on that website is also that small business filings for bankruptcy since 2010 is less than half of what it was in 2016. Every Republican candidate, including President Trump, claimed that the Affordable Health Care Act needed to be repealed because it was hurting small business. This was entirely not true according to the U.S. courts.gov, showing a reduction of small business filing bankruptcies. Those fiscal geniuses at the White House, like Gary Cohn and Larry Kudlow, the Republicans have the Republican-controlled Congress last year has managed to do the impossible. They have attempted to sabotage the Affordable Health Care Act, will lead to potentially as many as 6 million people fewer qualifying for health insurance, while the federal bill for coverage will rise about $33 billion this year. Now, I repeat, as a U.S. court, the facts that you find on uscourts.gov that show that it's critical that every congressional candidate in the future, as well as the current members of Congress, have a correct interpretation of how the Affordable Health Care Act has had a positive effect on the United States economy. To have a clear understanding of macroeconomics makes it easier to understand just how positive an effect on the economy the Affordable Health Care Act passed in March of 2010 had. If you review uscourts.gov and also bsl.gov, it does expose Republican alternative facts and political spin to be flat-out falsehoods. In the fiscal year 2010, more than 1.6 million people filed for bankruptcy, of which 62% filed listed unpaid medical bills as the primary reason for filing, and because they didn't have adequate insurance or any insurance to cover the medical bills. In 2011, after the Affordable Health Care went into effect, we saw the first year a 12% decline in bankruptcies filed, followed by, in 2012, an additional 14% decline, followed by 2013, another 12% decline, and followed by 2014, another 12% decline in bankruptcies filed. I repeat this fact that today listed unpaid medical bills as a primary reason for filing is less than half of what it was in 2010. In fact, please visit uscourts.gov and you will discover even the small business bankruptcies are less than half of what they were going into 2017. Now, what this proves is that all these things that the Republicans have been doing these past few years is voting more than 70 times to attempt to repeal was a mistake in behavior. Now, Fact is, both Senate Majority McConnell and President Chose have chosen to be intellectually dishonest. Small business bankruptcy every year, like I repeat, have gone down these past from 2011 to 2016. Having this effect on the economy prior to Trump taking office, it continues to show that allowing the insurance industry to manage healthcare is not only fiscally irresponsible, but ends up creating situations where people die because they simply have to wait to address a medical condition that requires a visit to the emergency room. 17 cents, I repeat, 17 cents of every medical dollar spent on hospital care goes to administrative cost. More than 15 cents of every medical dollar goes for administrative costs incurred by your doctor's office. Before the Affordable Health Care Act, 1 of every 5 doctor-prescribed treatments were denied by the insurance industry. In a hospital in Toronto, comparable to the size of the Boston Mass General, the administrative cost is 2.5%. Boston Mass General is 17%. The moronic concept proposed by many congressmen is selling insurance across state lines would only drive up costs, not drive down. All this does is increase the administrative expense that medical clinics, hospitals, and your doctor's office have to go through in order to provide healthcare services and medical services to the patients. Most senators and congressmen know this, but figure accepting the campaign donations from more than 6,000 lobbyists makes their job running for Congress much easier. Now, ignoring these facts is moronic. Saying you're a stable genius when you know that the statistics show otherwise, that the going from an Affordable Health Care Act to potentially single-payer health care would save even more dollars, estimated by the Congressional Budget Office could be as much as $1.7 trillion per year for the next 10 years if we went to single payer. Now, currently people pay taxes for their teachers, their firemen, their police officers, their firemen salaries, and other state and government services. Today, more than 54% of the federal budget is spent on national defense, with over 900 military bases and more than 1.2 million soldiers worldwide. In 2008, the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, reported that 83 of the Fortune 100 companies have invested in a minimum of one offshore tax scheme to lower their taxes. A recent GAO report revealed more than 90 out of the 100 companies do not do this now. In fact, there's more than 60 companies right now that are in the top 100 that are paying nothing in taxes. 2016 corporations held more than $2.6 trillion in offshore tax haven countries. The fact is that more than $750 billion in U.S. taxes went unpaid because of these tax loopholes that encourage corporations to park their money offshore. Now, from 2010 to 2016, Apple, because they deposited profits in foreign banks, avoided more than $60 billion in taxes. In fact, last year, Apple paid nothing in taxes. Amazon made over $11 billion. They paid nothing in taxes. According to the Senate Budget Committee, most recent corporate tax rates passed in Congress will save Apple an additional $48 billion in taxes for the fiscal year 2018. As long as corporations spend billions of dollars on contributing to campaign contributions to congressmen, election campaigns, there's no chance this bill will pass. Allowing all companies to pay royalties to foreign governments and claiming this is a tax deduction also is another tax dodge, and we lose more than $100 billion in taxes every year. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. The Veterans Administration budget, 3% of it goes when they go for managing their pharmaceutical with the patients. They were able to negotiate, and when they process the paperwork, the administrative cost, instead of being a 17% for private hospitals, the Veterans Administration budget is only 3% to manage the budget. Now, back in 1968, when Dr. Martin Luther said that America was investing in the Vietnam War, back then it was only less than 50% of the budget. Today, it's 54% of the budgets. The conservative ideology of Ayn Rand and Republicans like her subscribe to having successfully permeated a significant amount of the Republican caucus. According to BLS.gov, the minimum wage increased 260%, and from 1949 to 1950, they raised it from 25 cents an hour to 90 cents an hour. That's a 260% increase. Unemployment in 1949 was 5.9%. By May of 1953, it had dropped to 2.5%, as a major reason was because of the raising of the minimum wage. The average for the year was obviously, raising that minimum had a positive effect on that year-to-year stretch of the economy. According to the Congressional Budget Study in 2012, raising the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $11 an hour would pump into the economy an average of more than $150 billion in the next upcoming year. Now, right now, it's absurd that corporations pay one out of every 4 corporations pay no corporate tax. It's very, very frustrating. Government should protect people and regulate corporations. I repeat, government should protect people and regulate corporations, not protect the corporations and regulate people. Progressive Democrats and Democrat socialists both believe that access to affordable health care is everybody's civil right. We believe that because the insurance corporate welfare, that the insurance industry will always fight against the average American's ability to access affordable health care. In a few minutes, I will discuss that the fact that 29 million people were able to avoid bankruptcy because of the fact that they were able to get into the Affordable Health Care Act. Progressives are not against the rich. We're against the top 1% using their wealth to gain an unfair advantage over the 99%. Progressives are not against corporations. We're against corporations governing us. We're not against capitalism. We're against corruption in capitalism. Now, progressive Democrat believes in democratic socialism. For example, the insurance industry lobby spends $1.4 million every day during the 2009 and 2010 campaign. The fact is, in 2013, the government was able to shut down because of the insurance industry demanded that the Affordable Health Care Act be repealed. According to Standard & Poor's, this cost the United States economy $24 billion. Trump repeated this bad behavior again last year. Congress voted more than 55 times during the Obama administration to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act and cost the taxpayers more than $90 million with that process. Progressive Democrats believe that if you believe corporations are people, then you're clearly in favor and support corporate cronyism. It's critical to have the Supreme Court decision Citizens United overturned. Supporting a congressional candidate who does not support passing a constitutional amendment to address the Citizens United decision defines you as being a supporter of government corruption. Now, we believe that the military-industrial complex corrupt influence over foreign policy must be denied. We also believe that every true patriot will demand Congress and the President work together to put a stop to that corrupt influence. We're not against banks. We're against the fraudulent banking practices like those that led to the economic collapse in 2008. President Trump believes putting Mick Mulvaney in charge of the Consumer Protection Bureau is an ethical move because many of the bank's fraudulent practices that were fined and were forced by the government to pay fines and restitution to people who were defrauded. This must now end. Now, this is one of Trump's most corrupt acts since being elected president. Again, I repeat, we're not against the investment markets, we're against the fraud in those markets. In fact, Senator Sanders has proposed a 1/2 of 1% transaction tax that would cover the costs of health care. We're not against democracy, but because of the Citizens United decision, this has led to the sale of influence by elected representatives. If you choose to vote for a Republican for either Congress or the United States Senate for re-election, you're sanctioning corporations dictating both domestic and foreign policy. Electing Democrats to Congress will go a long way to addressing the problems created by the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Calling any Republican fiscally conservative is an oxymoron term. Fact is, Republicans choose to be intellectually dishonest, allowing lobbyists to dictate rather than advise on public policies in a significant majority of cases ends up costing public tax dollars to be spent on ends up being spent in a fiscally irresponsible result. Trump Care was designed by a fiscally irresponsible Republican Party. Government will now spend an additional $33 billion more to cover 8.9 fewer Americans. These intellectually dishonest fiscal geniuses in the White House and Republican-controlled Congress have managed to do the impossible and sabotage the Affordable Health Care Act. And this fiscal year just passed. In 2018, we saw a $33 billion increase because of these practices. And it's estimated that the premiums by insurance companies will rise another 18%. Heck of a job. According to the Urban Institute, which released these figures last April, by eliminating the individual mandate, it's an offshoot of a GOP tax cut measure that was signed last December by Trump before the election of 2018. That measure reduced the penalty for not carrying insurance to zero as of this year. According to the Urban Institute, eliminating this individual mandate combined with lesser acts of eliminating cost-sharing reduction payments is opening up to more than 6 million more people potentially being uninsured. Now, right now we're sitting at the premiums went up 18% last year because of these acts. Now, Trump has stood in the way of us making progress on the Affordable Health Care Act, and what's a fact is when you ignore statistics that are provided by the uscourts.gov, around the country, all your county governments compile statistics on individual bankruptcies and the reasons why they're filed. At 62% of the time, people are unable to They file because they're unable to pay their health care costs and they go bankrupt. Now, if you're able to qualify for the Affordable Health Care Act premium reductions, you're not going to go bankrupt. But if you're making over that $65,000 threshold, you're endangered of not qualifying for inexpensive insurance, and therefore some people go uninsured. Now, Ignoring these facts that the UScourts.gov is moronic. Trump claims to be a stable economic genius. He went to the Wharton School of Business. As I said earlier, the average sophomore analyzing the Affordable Health Care Act and the fact that it reduced the people going bankrupt by more than 50% over those 7 years is evidence of the fact it was a successful bill that was passed. It would have been even more successful if they had had the public option or Medicare for all. Now, please visit uscourts.gov and you'll see everything I've stated is 100% correct. I want to thank you very much for joining me today. And again, Progressive Communication Network, this is Al Rogers signing off.